without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into things. Before I pass things off to our great presenters, there are just a few quick housekeeping things for me to go over. The first is the chat, which I see everybody is already testing out, but let's continue to test that out. We want this to be a really collaborative experience. So at this time, if everybody could share in the chat where you're tuning in from and what the weather is like where you are. I see sunny but cold in Oregon. Lafayette, California, awesome. It is cold. Indiana, cold. Louisiana, and surprisingly cold. Yeah, I mean, January, I guess that's to be expected in lots of these places where I'm seeing that it's very cold. Although in Arizona, it's sunny and warm. I guess that also makes sense. Cincinnati, Ohio, awesome. Welcome to Steve. Macy's in Ohio as well. Welcome. Sarah's in Massachusetts. Welcome. See some California raining. Yes, I'm in California as well. We have some huge storms coming in. Ileana's in Philadelphia, 23 degrees, very cold. Awesome. Tina's in Massachusetts, cold and snowy. Great. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I'm seeing lots of people. I'm also seeing folks from Jamaica. That's amazing. Some international people as well. Great. Well, thank you for tuning in, and please continue to use the chat throughout today's webinar. Like I said, we want this to be a collaborative experience. So maybe you'll make a new friend or meet somebody new or make a connection through that chat. My next point here is about the poll. I launched a poll a few minutes ago that asks how familiar you are with Edulastic and what your role is in education. It looks like 87% of people have voted, which is great. If everybody could please take that poll, I would appreciate it. This helps us understand what kind of questions will be coming our way so that we can best support you throughout today's webinar. Lastly, if you have official questions throughout the webinar, please type those into the Q&A bubble that you see at the bottom of your screen. This helps myself and my colleagues Ileana and Justin and our presenters keep track of the questions. This way we will either type a response back to you throughout the webinar, or we will get to them during our designated Q&A time at the end of the event. Okay, so based on that poll, it looks like we have quite a few folks on the line today who are brand new with Edulastic, which is great, and I welcome you to an Edulastic webinar. But with that, today's webinar will not necessarily focus on those introductory features in Edulastic. If you are looking for that sort of training, kind of the getting started, those just getting up and running with Edulastic, I encourage you to check out this Edulastic 101 training. You can find this on our YouTube channel, and Ileana can hopefully share the link to that in the chat. But if you are brand new, I'd recommend checking this out in addition to today's session. Okay, this is a really exciting piece of today's webinar. Spark Math is brand new to Edulastic. We're really just announcing it this week and next week. And in today's webinar, we will be giving away a subscription to Spark Math. And so by being here live, you all are automatically entered to win, and we will announce the winner at the end of this webinar. You're probably wondering, what is Spark Math? So like I said, Spark Math is brand new to Edulastic, and it is curriculum aligned differentiated practice. And so what that means is Spark Math will automatically recommend review, practice, or challenge work for each of your individual students based on how they have done on previous lessons or quizzes or tests. It's really high tech and really amazing. I myself am still exploring it, but I'm very excited about it and looking forward to giving away one of these subscriptions at the end of today's event. So on the Spark Math side of things, we have 2 info sessions coming up to kind of kick off this Spark Math excitement. So one is on February 17th and one is on February 23rd. Like I said, we're just announcing these, so I'm excited that you all are the first to know about this. And Ileana can hopefully share the link to register for these in the chat. Like I said, February 17th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and then February 23rd at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, and at this time, I'm going to introduce our first presenter. So Barbara, I invite you to turn on your camera and turn on your microphone, and I will introduce you at this time. So Barbara Zing is a high school math and computer science teacher from West Virginia. She's a 4th generation teacher, and this is her 27th year in the classroom. Today, she'll be talking about giving feedback to students in Edulastic and how this can help drive the learning process. So welcome, Barbara, and go ahead and take it away.
All right. First of all, for those of you on the East Coast, perhaps your day is over teaching, so take a deep breath. Let it go. That day's done. For those of you who still might have an hour of teaching or office hours or whatever your county is doing, it's okay. We're going to all get through this. This has been a truly tremendous year of challenge and growth and flexibility, and Edulastic has been right there to fill in for a lot of us what we used to do with pencil and paper tests. And my focus is on using it to give feedback. I am teaching 100% virtual. I am teaching 100% from home. So I ended last year, I was at a seminar when everything shut down. So I never got to say goodbye to my students. And I started this year virtually with virtual students who I've never met. So it's hard to build relationships with students when you don't see them. What I see is little circles with their initials and little avatars. And so I've actually gotten so I can identify different students by their avatars, but you still lack that connection, that ability to speak to a specific student, to give a specific student personally encouragement. My county uses Teams, and in Zoom, you can send a personal message in the chat to a student. In Teams, you can't do that. So you can't send a specific word of encouragement or correction to a student in the platform we're using. So I find that by being able to send that kind of personal communication in Edulastic, that's helping me make the connections that are so crucial. So Jan, if you do the next slide, please. This, I think, on the picture on the left is how we would love to think that virtual learning is going on. The picture on the right, in my case, is frequently more realistic. I still am in contact with my colleagues who are in the building, and my county is trying to go back face to face with some students in the high school, but between outbreaks and the snowstorm coming, they still haven't gone back face to face. So we all have that persona that we put on for our students, and then we have the reality. So if we can find a way to ease some of that stress, to make some of that stress less stressful, less anxious, so that we're not laying in bed at night staring at the ceiling going, what do I do about? That's something that helps us all. So Edulastic allows you to give students specific feedback. Next slide, please. All right, there are two ways that you can do it. When you look at the class board with the results of students, there's one place where you can click where you can give overall feedback. And this is a general comment. It might be something like, you might want to go back and take a second look at the questions you skipped, or here's a video to help you with this concept that you missed. Or you can give question by question feedback. And this is what I find to be the most beneficial when you can, and I always address the students by name when I give them their feedback. And it's my way of talking to them. So I'll say, Kristen, remember when we did this kind of problem in class? What do you remember? And so remember, there's two ways. There's a general feedback for the entire assessment, and then there's a specific question by question feedback. All right, next slide, please. And these are some tips. What I like to do with feedback, obviously you don't want to have to type original messages in every one if it's the same message for the same question. So I start with the student who scored the lowest score on the test. and I look at what questions they missed that other students missed as well. And I go through that student's mistakes. And if I come up with a general comment or a general instruction that I want them to do, then that can just be cut and paste into other students. You can change the name, but that way you can save a little bit of time. At the end, I like to double check that I have a comment with each partially correct or incorrect question, because that way we've set up a conversation. I also have my students take action. I've created a form, and you can create however you want to handle this, but mine has a column that says the question, and a column that says the teacher's comment, and a column that says action. And maybe it'll say rework the problem showing your work. Maybe it'll say look up and write the definition. Maybe it'll say, you know, redo this. My students rarely go back and look at their mistakes. This forces them to do that because that sheet is a separate assignment. So they have to go back and look at the question. They have to go back and look at what I said, and then they have to do something. They either have to redo it, they have to look up something, they have to, you know, there's action that happens. So those are some things that I have found that are particularly effective in getting kids to look at their mistakes. And then they can write something like, you know, it was a careless mistake. Oh, the columns were the problem, the teacher's comments, and the action step. Whether it was write something, do something. And so I've also used a column that said, was it a careless mistake? Was it a concept mistake? Did you not understand what you were doing, or did you just make a careless mistake? So in these days when we aren't really talking, where some of us are not talking to live students, I have found that this is tremendously helpful in starting those conversations. Now I have office hours every day from 1:30 to 2:30 when my students can come from private tutoring. So maybe that's something I would put in the comment. Please stop by office hours and I'll help you with these problems. Just, it's a way of establishing communication that we really don't have for those of us who are not in the classroom. Any questions right now? Some of them I think are going to be answered later, but.
Yeah, that was awesome, Barbara. Thanks for those really good tips and for answering that one question on the fly about can you share the columns with comments with us? So I think the rest of the questions, we will either type responses back or we will get to them at the end during our designated Q&A time. So yeah, thanks again, Barbara. That was great. Really appreciate all that you have to share. Okay, at this time, I am going to introduce our next presenter. So Rhonda, go ahead and turn on your camera and turn on your microphone, and I will introduce you now. So Rhonda Kilgo is a secondary math curriculum specialist from Mississippi. This is her 24th year in education, and today she'll be talking about how she created a district item bank in Edulastic. So thanks for being here, Rhonda, and go ahead and take it away.
Thanks. I'm so excited about this and honored that I get to be a part of this. And as Jen said, I've been in education for quite a few years, but this is my third year in my current role as one of the secondary math curriculum specialists in Rankin County School District in Mississippi. So what I wanted to talk with you today is a little bit about how we got here with the item bank, and then kind of go over three things. Mainly, I'm going to focus on collaboration and how you can do that through the Edulastic platform. Hopefully you'll leave here with some ideas about using this with your colleagues or your teachers or your PLCs, because I think, as Barbara said, using these collaboration tools will definitely help lessen the stress that we're all experiencing right now. So the way that we got here was when I started in this position 3 years ago, we were looking for a way to build a district item bank. A lot of our teachers in the district like to write their own items. Some of them even had item writing training. And so we were looking for something that they could put multiple items in, share in the district, possibly do some common assessments. And we looked at several different platforms, and we chose Edulastic. We actually use Edulastic for our 4 content areas. So it's not just math, but math, of course, is what I focus on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to share my screen, and says, I think you're still sharing, maybe, Jan? Okay.
I just stopped sharing. You should be able to take over.
All right. Great. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah, looks great. Thank you, Rhonda.
Okay, thank you. So how we started with this is we had some teachers who were piloting the program for us, and they got to use the paid version, and they got to see all the resources and tools that were there. And so then we started bringing those teachers together when we began this last fall. Now, I will tell you that, of course, we started last fall. We were going really, really well, and then the spring happened. And so we didn't get to write quite as many items as we had hoped to when we started, but we're still working on that and hoping to proceed with that. But you can see that some of these things that I have here, these are where we did the item writing together. The teachers came, wrote items, vetted the items, they selected them to give to their students, and then they were able to look at the reports for those common items. So an easy way to share is every item in Edulastic has its own item number. So once our teachers were writing items, then they could take this item number and they could share it with others who could then do a search for that particular item by item number. Another way that they were able to share that was pretty easy is to be able to put this into the district item bank. So we were able to, if you notice here, I've got one that is in draft form and one that is in published form. And I wanted to do that because what we found out is that to do that, to change the bank, that we actually had to make sure that we go ahead and publish the assessment, but you do not have to assign the assessment. So this arrow will allow you to do that. Once you get to this point, you can actually change your item bank, or your collection rather. And so at this point, then you can share this with the district. So anyone in my district can now see all the items as well as the assessment itself. You can also share it to everyone, which would put it in the public item collection. You can share it with link sharing and then individuals. So this is the setting that I wanted to talk the most about because this is the one that we love. This setting actually allows me to share this with an individual teacher or someone from our district. So I'm just going to do this with my colleague. All right, and I'm going to there we go. All right, and I can let her either view and duplicate, which would allow her to use the assessment, use the items, but she cannot make edits to it. She cannot change the assessment. Or I can allow her to edit and remove items. When I do this, then I can copy the link and then I can share that with her. So once that link is copied, then I can share it with her and it'll pop up here. Now, I will tell you, we did learn that it doesn't automatically share it. You can choose to send the email notification, or you could send a separate email and share that link with that person. So what our teachers have been able to do is when they come together, they are able to use that tool, and they can work on the assessments much like you would a Google Doc or another area where you might collaborate at the same time. So you can actually be collaborating on the exact same assessment at the same time. And this was a great way for them. And we've had teachers that are doing common planning. Now we bring together our grade bands. So our 6th through 8th grade math teachers come together in grades, and they do common planning and collaboration. And they use this quite a bit in order to collaborate on their assessments, because then they go back and give common assessments. Then they're able to talk about the reports and analyze those questions for the vetting process. The other way that you can actually share your assessments is from your teacher account. If you go to manage classes, and you select your class, then you can add a co-teacher to your class. You can also add students if you would like, but you can add a co-teacher to your class. Let me do that by email, see if I'll pull it up that way. Well, I'm just going to do this. All right, and then you add this teacher to your class. I'm not going to do that because that's one of our teachers that would know what I was sending them. When they are added to your class, then your teachers can actually, those teachers can actually give your assessments. They can see your assessments. They can see the reports for your students. Now, one thing that I will tell you about the add teacher, I'm not sure if this has been changed, so someone may know the answer to this, but I know that before you could not remove that teacher from your class. So you couldn't go back and remove that teacher. That teacher would always be a part of that class. It works out really, really well if you have teacher teams. We had a teacher that had to leave in the fall, wasn't able to come back into our district, and their teacher teams make each other co-teachers in their class. So another teacher was just able to take right over and start assigning things to those students until they could get a substitute and then an extended sub into that class. So that's worked really, really well as a collaboration tool. The only tool that will allow others, though, to edit the same test or the same assessment rather as you is that co-teacher, the co-author link when sharing it with another author. Okay, and then the other things that I kind of just wanted to mention to you are just the items. And I was going to show you some of the items that our teachers really love. And this has really been beefed up this year. So if you guys have used it before and you haven't looked at it this year, the way these are organized now is so much easier to see than it was before. And they actually have just, it's all listed out for you, and you can actually see all the different ways that you can use these different types of questions. Multiple choice, of course, lots of teachers use that. We've found, though, that our students really struggle with those tech-enhanced questions that are not just the standard multiple choice. And so Edulastic has so many different question types that you can choose from. So our teachers really like the drag and drop, the text drop down. Our students see a lot of that on standardized tests. And so they really like using that, and they can put those into their assessments, and then students have access and they have experience with those type of questions. And so it's not a shock when they see them later. The classify and match, those are other questions they really like. One thing with this resequencing question that our math teachers use this for is they can type in a sequence to solving an equation or a proof or anything like that, and then they can have the students to resequence those steps as an assessment question. I'm trying to get our math teachers to use the writing ones a little bit more, especially this passage one. I haven't broken through to them, most of them yet, but a lot of them shy away from this one. But I think this one is great. I saw yesterday someone was using it with a video, so I think that's awesome. And then, of course, you get down here and you have those specific math questions, and you can see those as well. The graphing questions are very user-friendly. Our teachers like this platform and using these graphing questions better than any of the others they have access to. And then the last one that I wanted to point out was the multi-part. And the great thing about this combination multi-part is you can do A, B, C, you can keep doing parts, and within those parts, you can do different question types. So just because your part A is a multiple choice question does not mean that your part B can't be a text drop down entry. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just kind of talk a little bit about the other things that I wanted to just remind or tell you guys, especially those of you that are new to Edulastic and even those of you that have used it before, is that there are some great new aspects and great new tools that they have just rolled out this year. And the ones that we really love is you can now write individual questions. Last year when we started the item writing process, when we would select the right items or the teachers would write items and put into Edulastic, they had to sync that with an assessment. So you might see an assessment on your page, the dashboard, that has 2 or 3 questions because those were the questions that that particular teacher wrote. But you can now actually write individual items, link them to your standards the same way as before, but they don't have to be linked to an assessment at that time. The other thing that they like is that we really like and they use quite often is you can also now make corrections in an assessment on a key, and it has a regrade feature. And the redirect feature, we've used tons of this year with students. We actually used it with some students ourselves. We were helping some teachers out because of trying to give grace and trying to work with students on time and time management and with the online learning. And it has so many different features. You can redirect a student, a group of students, an entire class, and you can have them, it be redirected with their the questions that they got correct locked. It can give them answers if you want to, or you can withhold that information. So the teachers have a lot of different things that they can do when they use that redirect feature.
Rhonda, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I think all of the stuff that you shared with collaboration is even more important this year than ever before. So definitely appreciate that, and also love seeing your favorite question types. So thanks for that great presentation. And yeah, if people have questions for Rhonda, please enter them into the Q&A bubble, and we will get to them during our designated Q&A time. All righty, at this time, I'm going to introduce our next panelist. So Tina, if you want to turn on your audio and turn on your video, I will introduce you at this time. So Tina Kelly is a middle school math department head and fifth grade teacher from Massachusetts. She's an avid technology user, and she's currently in the dissertation phase of an education doctoral program. Today, she'll be talking about using the benefits of Edulastic in a math department cross-district, all the way from formative assessments to benchmarks. So thanks for being here, Tina, and go ahead and take it away.
All right. So I am working from home today because I am currently awaiting a COVID test. So if I have some cats jumping on me, I apologize because no matter what I do, I close my door and they don't care. So my name is Tina Kelly. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm the middle school math department head. I've been at middle school math department head for 2 years for both schools. Prior to that, I was the middle school math department head at one school for 2 years. And prior to that, I was a math coach and a math specialist. So they've kind of changed the role and evolved the role as I've been there. So we are just floating with it. And I also, prior to this, was primarily a 7th and 8th grade teacher. And last year they put me to 5th grade. So that's been an interesting experience. I am actually hybrid. So what that means is I teach full-time in school. I have half of my students are with me in person. The other half are remote, but they're fully remote. There's no live teaching. And then we rotate. So then the other half come in, and that half goes home. So it's been an interesting kind of model and getting used to it. It has been a lot of work just because you're planning lessons for the kids that are in front of you, but you're also trying to plan meaningful work when they're remote that they're interested in and that they're going to complete. Can you go to the next slide for me, please? Thank you. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about where we are now with Edulastic and where we were. So it has been a 4-year evolution, okay? I started using Edulastic about 5 years ago. Actually, Ileana tweeted me and told me about it, and that's how I found out about it. And then I was like instantly hooked. And when I went to Natick to be a math coach, I was trying to get people excited to use it. And I was the only user in one school. And now we currently have 228 users in 4 schools. And those 4 schools are the high school, 2 middle schools, and 1 elementary. I'm still working on the elementary folks. We currently have 3,872 students using it and 344 sections, okay? So it has been, a lot of growth from when we first started in this district to now. Can you go to the next one, please? So I want to talk a little bit about how we're using it. So we're using it for formative assessments. So like quick little 4 or 5 question check-ins to see if students are understanding material. We're using it for summatives. And what I mean by that is like the end of a chapter assessment or the end of standard assessment. We're also using it for benchmarks. So we have, in our district, we administer benchmarks in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Depending on the grade level, it can be 2 to 3 benchmarks a year. We use those benchmarks to help us get ready for our standardized testing and also for the MCAS. And we also use them to see if we're having the same alignment and rigor across the district, okay? Teachers are also using it in class as well as for homework and for assignments. So that's been really great. Okay, can you go to the next one for me? So how did we get there? So one user, me, super like excited about it, can't wait to share it with everybody. When I tried, they weren't ready. Okay. So what happened in the beginning was I was using it for because I was also teaching a small group intervention classes as a math coach, and I was using it with my group. And as I was making assignments, so I would say I was working with a small group, I would share it with the teachers so that they could see the assignments. So to get it out and to share it with more people, I started doing professional development. So what I would do is we have one time a year, we have this big professional development we call it NILS, technology presentation, where teachers present to everybody. And I would present it. And I did that every year for 5 years. So every year for 5 years, I would present Edulastic, okay? I would use it and share it. And I started grade level by grade level. So my first grade I hooked on this, believe it or not, was 5th grade teachers. I had the most buy-in from them. And then I had some with 7th grade. And then I had some with 6th grade. And then 8th grade was the hardest, which I thought was interesting because I thought 8th grade had the most, probably had the flexibility and could use it the most, but at that point, it was interesting. So once I started getting teachers to get into it, then there was a lot of word of mouth, right? So the word of mouth was like, hey, have you tried this? I made this one, I shared this one, why don't you look at it? And that's how it got spread. Then there came to a point where I had benchmarks in some grade levels, common assessments, and different things, but I eventually had to mandate, in order for us to get alignment, that everybody use it for benchmarks and have a couple common assessments. So can you go to the next slide for me? So again, year one, we was really one math PLC, which was 5th grade, in one school, okay? By year 2, I had 2 PLCs, 5th grade and 7th grade, using it and sharing it across the middle schools. And this is when I was still in one school, okay? By year 3, we were using it so much and we had pockets of users that my assistant superintendent decided to go with district paid licenses, which was amazing because the data it opened up that I was able to see was awesome. So then had all PLCs using it to some degree, and had common assessments in all. So I had common assessment in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade, cross district, okay? This year we're still using it. We still have the paid district license. We still have common assessments. I'm not using it for benchmarks as much, just because for 5th grade and 8th grade, we're not administering the benchmarks this year because of the time constraints. So let me talk a little bit about common assessments. So, this is 4 years in coming, and the common assessments have been designed and redesigned and changed and added to. I have to tell you right now, they're really helping us a ton and saving us. I have a fully remote program that students are fully remote, and I have 2 math teachers teaching in that, 3 math teachers teaching in that. I have one middle school in one side of the town. I have another middle school on the other side of town. We're collaborating virtually, but the common assessments and the benchmarks have really helped us stay aligned. They also are helping because we're constantly having different cohorts of kids. So using this particular tool has helped us look at the data and look at the 2 different cohorts and compare where they are. And had we tried to do that this year and not had it set up prior, it would have been a huge challenge. I will tell you that in the beginning, was primarily a content creator. So I would create a lot of the questions. I would find questions that were really good. I would share them out. I would create a lot of assignments. I now am more of I'm using what other people are creating and they're sharing with me. So I used to take the lead in creating stuff. And now I have so many teachers who are actually making assignments and creating it and using it that I don't have to do that as much. I will tell you also, last year when we went fully remote from March to the end of the year, it made life so much easier. So in 5th grade, we have workbooks, and when the students went home, we had no warning. They just went home, and all of a sudden they don't have workbooks, and students don't have printers, and so we had to primarily give work that was on the computer. So Edulastic was a huge tool in being able to, for us to deliver assignments and collect data and track participation. And it's been awesome. Is there any more slides after this? I can't remember. Okay. So again, our next steps would be next year for us is that we would make sure that I would push out the 2 benchmarks. So right now I have teachers pushing out benchmarks through their classes. As a district admin, I can actually push out the benchmarks. As a district admin, I can actually go in and act as a teacher. So if a teacher's having a hard time with something, I can go in and see it. I can look at individual teacher data. I can look at data across assessments. So my plan next year is I push out the benchmarks, say to like all 6th graders, all 5th graders, all 7th graders, all 8th graders, that we would continue to use Edulastic for assessments and assignments. And then really, we have some really great users, but creating super users so that they can be the ones that go out and present, or they can be the ones at the webinars, or they can be the ones that are leading the charge, because that's where they are now. Just a couple things I wanted to mention. The filtering option, Rhonda, that's why you might have had an issue, just because you have to be careful and we might have to clear all the filters in order to sort by question number. It's so complex that sometimes that's the issue. The redirect and the regrade as a teacher is amazing, okay? And the fact that they have done so much this year, because they did a bunch of upgrades to make it even better, is amazing. So I would say to you that those are awesome, awesome, awesome. The evolution of Edulastic has been amazing, having been able to see it. But I will tell you that what I love about this particular company that I don't always find in other ed tech companies is how much they're available. So they have amazing videos that you can watch. And this is not a paid sponsorship. I'm just telling you this because I know it from personally experiencing it. The videos are awesome. So if I have a teacher who's having a hard time, I will sometimes send them videos to help them. Their website, the help part of their website is awesome. The help desk is really good, super responsive. So if you're in the moment, you're stuck, click that little help bubble, they will help you, okay? And also, if you're having challenges like Ileana and Jan, even tweeting them or just reaching out to them has been super, super helpful. So I just wanted to mention that, because sometimes I have big textbook companies or other education software that we use within the district that it takes me like weeks and weeks of nagging them for them to fix things or talk to them. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, because I saw some of the comments and in the chat, they take your feedback and do something with it. So if you say to them, like, I really want to see this, or I really feel like this would be helpful, or we really want to, like, this would make a huge difference, I will find that they are super, super responsive. I think they listen to teachers, which is key. So I think that's all I had.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. It's awesome to hear about your Edulastic journey and your story there. So I really appreciate you sharing it. And yeah, and thanks for the kind words about the Edulastic support team too. We love to hear that. Okay, so now we are going to move on to our designated Q&A time. So if people have questions for Tina or Rhonda or Barbara, please enter them into the Q&A bubble now. And if Tina and Barbara and Rhonda, if you all could turn your cameras on and then be ready to unmute yourself too. We have some questions that have come through, so we can go ahead and start answering these, and we will get to as many questions as we can. So our first questions are for Barbara. Barbara, people are wondering if you could elaborate. Specifically, we have a question from Cynthia, and she says, is the comment feature that you use to give comments back to your students, is it within Edulastic, or do you use a Google Doc or a worksheet for that?
Okay, the comment feature itself is built into Edulastic, but I take it one step further by I've created a form which I've sent so that it can be passed on to all of you, where the students have to write the problem down, write the comment that was in Edulastic, and then take some action. So they get the comments through the Edulastic assessment, and then they take it further and take some action.
Great, thank you, Barbara. And then you might have just touched on this, but Amy also asks, Barbara, you said you leave the comment and it forces them, the students, to do something. Can you elaborate a bit more on this? Is it, yeah, if you could just explain that a little bit more.
So say the question was something that had to do with vocabulary and they put the wrong word. The action might say, look in your list of vocabulary words for this chapter and copy the correct definition for term or for product or whatever it is. So that there's, in addition to just reviewing what they got wrong, they have to take a corrective step that helps that then set in their mind.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, any of you can take this actually. Faraday is wondering, does Edulastic have lessons plans in it besides just assessments? So can you use Edulastic for lessons and practice, or is it just for tests?
Well, if you're talking about a formal lesson plan, there's nothing that is, quote, a lesson plan, but there are tons of things in Edulastic that could be part of your lesson plan. I mean, you could make exit tickets, you could make bell ringers, you could make, I mean, there's a wide range of what you can do with what's already there or with what you could create to meet your own needs. So formal lesson plans, no, but certainly the availability of a ton of resources.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that, and I haven't played around with this feature, so the other two presenters may have done this already, but the playlist feature is something that you might be thinking about, because you can actually build modules in there and then assign the entire thing or assign parts of that as you go through your lesson.
I would agree. I think it's a great piece. Like, I've played with it a little bit. I don't know about you, but this year there's been so much, like, I've learned so much new technology just because of what's happened, that I haven't played with it as much, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, because you can also share it with your co-teachers or your PLC or anything like that. So there's a lot of opportunity within those playlists. I think one thing that we kind of touched upon that I think would be helpful to know is the item bank is huge. So although I do a lot of content creation, the item bank is huge. So when we first started, we relied on questions that other people had created, right? And until my teachers felt comfortable with creating their own questions, that's where we lived, right? I will tell you, you find those people who make really good questions, and then instead of searching by item number, you search by person. So for example, like Jeffrey Fett, I think his name is, he is like my go-to guy, right? Like, I know that when he writes questions, they're going to be exactly what I need. So that's a place to start. And the other thing too, is you can duplicate questions. So maybe sometimes the question is kind of what I need, but I want to kind of tweak it. And what I like about that too, is I can use a question as a formative and then turn around, duplicate the question, beef it up a little bit, and now it becomes a summative question. So those are just a couple things as we were sitting here talking, I was thinking about.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina, for adding that. And I will also add to the lesson question. And Ron, to your point about playlists, that yesterday in our other Edulastic for Math webinar, we had a presenter focus on Edulastic playlists and how she uses them for lessons and then formatives and then building up to summatives. So maybe Ileana can share the link to that webinar in the chat to hopefully give you a little bit more context, Faraday. Hopefully that answered your question. Next, Rhonda or Tina, either of you can take this one. Can you elaborate on the redirect feature a little bit? When do you use it and why is it helpful?
So can I still share my screen? Am I able to do that still?
Yeah, definitely. I might need to stop sharing. Let me go ahead and stop. And then go ahead and take over.
All right. So I pulled this up so you guys could see, and I've got this on present mode so you can't see the students, but here's what you see on your live screen. And you can click the boxes for individual students and you can redirect, but the redirect feature here, when you click on that, it's going to allow you to redirect to the whole class or absent students or specific students within a class. It'll also allow you, like I was kind of mentioned before, that it can, all the questions can go back out, or you can do just the skipped questions and the ones they got incorrect. And then you are also able to release certain parts of that, the feedback, the scores, or all of it. So those are the different options that you have, and then you just would redirect those. One thing that's really nice is that it also, you can mark students as absent. So when you do the redirect feature, you could just redirect to the absent students, because I think someone mentioned for the students that were quarantined. So that would be an easy way to redirect to those students.
I actually used this, the redirect feature last Friday. So last Friday, I administered our common multiplication assessment to my students. And I was able to actually, they took the assessment. I was able to, because the results are live. So I was able to, as students finished, pull them up, right? Look at their assessment, give them feedback, and then redirect it and send them back to fix it, if that makes any sense. And that has been awesome. What I think that it's just so easy to use. I will tell you the one thing that's a little tricky for the students is they think when you redirect them, they think they're going to go back into the same assessment and redo the questions. It actually pops up as a new assignment. So I just figured I'd mention that because that's the one part that the students have a hard time with. But the feature is awesome. Same thing if like you were giving it as an assignment and the kids maybe kind of like quickly flip through it. Like you can see the time on the question. So if you see a kid just did like click, 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 you can actually redirect it and say, using feedback, right, Barbara? You can be like, listen, I see you spent 20 seconds on question 1. Like you can't answer this math question in 20 seconds. I'm going to send it back to you and you're going to go back and fix it. So that's been awesome as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. And thank you, Rhonda, for showing that. I wanted to clarify some differences between free features versus premium features. I see we had some questions about this in the chat, and I think Faraday, you also asked about this in the Q&A bubble. So most of the stuff that has been showed today is free. All of that, the live dashboard, the redirect, all of that great stuff is free. Playlists that we were talking about earlier, that is premium. And some of the more advanced reports are premium as well. So Ileana, if you don't mind sharing in the chat our teacher premium blog post, that outlines very specifically which features are premium. And I will say the free version of Edulastic is very robust. There's lots of great stuff in there. I am trying to dig through all of these questions in the Q&A bubble. We have some really great ones coming in. But one question that I do see that I think would be great for all three of you to go down the line and answer. I know on today's webinar, we had several new teachers, either new to Edulastic or new to teaching. Where would you recommend that they start in Edulastic? What tips would you give?
Well, I have done Edulastic for a number of years, and I started with just the question bank. I didn't create my own questions for a couple of years. There's just so much out there. And another feature of that is if you clone a question, then you can adapt it to your state standards. I contacted Edulastic. I said, would you upload the West Virginia state standards? They said, absolutely. So I can track my students against West Virginia standards, which is really helpful. But I just started with looking around what's there.
Thanks, Barbara. Tina or Rhonda, do you have any tips for new teachers?
I would agree with that, what Barbara said. And when I talked about our teachers writing their own questions, but they collaborated and used the question bank as well. So they just pulled in those questions onto their assessments, and then they were able to either clone the question or use it as is. So I think there is a lot out there, and you can sort the items also by different types, item types. So if you've got a certain item type that you want your kids to work on, then you could actually in the bank just search for those item types.
I would agree. I'd start really simple. Like maybe the first assessment I gave would be formative with like a couple questions I found from the item bank just to get a feel for it. I think it's interesting. Once you start using it, you see all the data you can get, you're hooked. Because you're like, oh, I can get it right now and you can't fool me. Like I can see right now what's going on. But I would say like a 3 to 5 question formative using the item banks. Multiple choice questions are really easy to use. The short answer ones are a little funky just because there's so many versions of the answers, but that's where I'd start, like a 3 to 5 formative multiple choice question.
Awesome. Thank you all. Brooke just asked a really good question. She is wondering about student groups in Edulastic. She says, is there a way to adjust time for different groups of students when giving a time test, especially for students that have extended time accommodations? Barbara, Tina, or Rhonda, do any of you have experience with this? And if not, I can weigh in a little bit as well.
I don't currently have students who get extra time on in my class, but I have worked with teachers in creating groups. So classes versus groups. So classes is going to be maybe something you import from your Google Classroom, but then groups is very specific, smaller things that you can create within Edulastic, right? And then when you have those group features, it will allow you to give that extra extended time. So you would set up the group, put the students who are in the extended time, and then do it that way. So I've worked with teachers to do it. I personally haven't done it, but I have played along with that group feature a ton. And I've also used that group feature, not just for like extended time, but for like differentiation. Worked with teachers so that they can differentiate and give different assignments to different students without having to go through a whole list and click it out through the assignment feature. So I don't know if that's helpful.
That's definitely helpful. Allison also just wrote, thank you, Allison, for this great tip. She says, Brooke, I make a copy of the exam and label it as a modified test. And then this lets me assign to that specific student group. So that's really great for differentiation. Thanks, Allison. Alrighty, so at this time, we are going to move on to our Spark Math giveaway and wrap things up here. And then if there's time at the end, we can come back and answer some of these other questions. I see that Ileana and Justin are typing a ton of responses back as well. And Barbara, Tina, and Rhonda, if you guys see any questions in that Q&A bubble that you know the answer to, go ahead and type a response back too. But at this time, I am gonna keep on moving through these slides. So, as promised, it is time for our Spark Math giveaway winners to be announced. So Ileana randomly selected 2 winners for today's webinar. So congratulations to Carissa Perry and Tracy Carter. Thank you everybody for being here live, but an extra congratulations to Carissa and to Tracy. I will be in touch within the next couple of days to get you both upgraded to Spark Math. And I have your email from when you first registered for this webinar. Okay, and then lastly, I just wanted to say thank you everybody for joining us today. And a special thank you to Barbara, Tina, and Rhonda. All of your presentations were amazing. I always learn stuff from these, so I love being here, and I think there are just tons of compliments coming through the chat as well. So thank you to everybody. And lastly, I wanted to say that Edulastic is really active on social media. So give us a follow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You'll learn other tips and tricks and other webinar announcements as well.